Bridle leather is a high-quality leather traditionally used to make horse bridles and other equestrian equipment. It's very well known for its strength and durability, and bridle leather is usually vegetable tanned with natural plant tannins, and then hot stuffed with waxes and oils to give it a smooth, polished look. It also helps make it more water resistant, which is especially helpful when used in outdoor conditions where bridle is often used. Over time, bridle leather can develop a rich patina, and its smooth, polished appearance make it a really popular choice for a variety of other leather goods as well. And these include belts, wallets, bags, and more that we're going to explore. Let's take a brief look at the history of bridle leather and where it came from. So leather has been used for horse tack for thousands of years, but the demand for a sturdy and reliable equestrian leather gear increased a lot from the Middle Ages through the 17th century. By the 18th century, bridle leather had gained popularity and was known for its exceptional quality, craftsmanship, durability, and strength. Skilled leather crafters used the material to produce leather goods that were also very functional and, depending on what was made, luxurious. So this demand has continued to grow, and through the 19th century, the use of horses increased and continued to be used across agricultural, recreational, and commercial applications as well. Today, bridle leather is used not only in equestrian gear, but also in the durable high-end leather products that look to mirror the functionality, visual appearance, and durability of bridle leather goods. So let's take a look at bridle leather close up and give you a really good view in terms of what it looks like zoomed in. Here we are. This is the top of bridle leather. And you'll notice it still retains a lot of that original grain pattern and texture of the natural hide, which is excellent because usually that layer is the strongest, and that's what you're going to want on a very strong, durable type of leather. And you can see here, it's a relatively, smooth surface. And I say that in context of some leathers have a very kind of ridge-like bumps and valleys in a very close-up view of it. This is relatively smooth. Along with that, you'll notice there aren't a lot of kind of holes in it or marks or things like that. And that's primarily because of the oils and the fats and the waxes that are infused into it. It kind of makes that more even and more durable. Looking at the bottom, here's a really good look as to what makes this a little bit different. Most often when we're looking at the bottom side or the flesh side of leather, there are going to be a lot of fibers exposed. They're going to be open as the fibers have more space between them towards the bottom, and it's almost going to feel fuzzy to the touch. When you see here, it's a relatively dense collection of fibers. And if you were to feel it, it wouldn't really feel so much as fuzzy as it would almost kind of hard and have a little bit of a smoothness to it. And that again is primarily when during tanning, they're putting in those waxes and those oils and really kind of making a denser material, and those fibers kind of compact together. And then they're going to look like this, where instead of like open fuzzy fibers, it's going to be a little bit of a smoother, denser configuration on the back. Looking at the section view, this makes it really clear as to what's going on. So on the top, we have that really thin, dense, strong layer, our full grain all the way through. And then as we move lower, you could see that, even into that top grain area, there is a still dense pattern of fibers, but it begins to get a little bit wider and clearly looks different. And then as we get further down into the layers itself, the fibers really begin to open up. They're going to become, wider, a little larger, and even a little less strong because there isn't that density. They're going to be, less durable as well. And now when we look at the kind of the bridal aspect of it, where they're putting in those oils and waxes, you can kind of look at the top. The color density is very clear. There's going to be a lot up there. Then we're looking at the bottom as well. We could see just like we saw on the back, it's infused there. And then looking actually through the material itself, we see a lot of that same color consistency there, which is incredible because some leathers, when they're treated, you're going to see that color density kind of towards the top and towards the bottom, but the middle will remain relatively white or lighter colored, whatever that original hide was. Here we see a pretty dense, deep, and thorough penetration of those oils and waxes, which help make bridle leather a very durable and consistent leather throughout. Let's look at the production process. So bridle leathers are often made from cowhide, and they can vary in thickness, once finished and split, from around 4 millimeters to 6 millimeters. Now, they're typically sourced from a top grain leather, which is known for its strength and durability. For From a tanning process, it's usually and traditionally vegetable tanned. The tannins there are often comprised of elements from tree bark or plants, sometimes nuts and other woods as well. This process is time consuming, especially when compared to chrome tan leather. Vegetable tan leather can take, weeks to months for an entire run, whereas chrome tan can be just a few days. But this also helps make bridal leathers have a, very stiff and durable characteristic to them. Once the tanning is complete, the leather is then stuffed with greases and finished with waxes, and this gives it a very smooth look on the back and the front, making it softer, more pliable, and water and wear resistant. After tanning and stuffing, bridal leather can often be dyed as well, using aniline dyes, and these penetrate the leather deeply and contribute to a consistent color throughout. Once dyed and dried, the material can be polished and then finished with more oils and more waxes, adding further shine and protection. Because there are so many steps and also so many components involved, this labor-intensive process often makes bridal leather pricier than other leathers simply because of the complexity of its tanning method. As such, fewer tanneries produce this type of leather, although the ones that do, there are some exceptional ones out there, leading to some really great materials. Looking at cost, it's generally around $12 to $14 per square foot, and there are a few key factors to keep in mind. You could certainly find some more expensive, less expensive, but this is mainly going to be driven by the type of hide that was used. Most often it's going to be a bovine or a cowhide, and then also the quality of the tannery that is producing it. In the case of bridal leather, there are only a few, and they typically do a really good job. But it's going to be important that if you see others that are selling it, maybe you're not familiar with, definitely get familiar with their process and reputation, because that will generally reflect in the materials that they produce. So with that said, it's going to be around $12 to $14 per square foot. Some of the pros include a very high shine. Since this leather has so many waxes and kind of oils infused into it, you're going to be able to get a nice shine out of it. It's not going to be like a patent leather shine, which is essentially reflective, but it's definitely going to have more of a smooth consistency and shine than, say, an untreated, vegetable tan leather. It's also very strong. This is the primary function, why it was originally created, used for horse bridle and the reins and the equipment essentially used day to day for work and travel. As such, we can use those same characteristics when making leather goods, and in most cases, it's going to be really preferable. And it can develop a patina. It's going to have a little bit of a different patina than, say, an untreated vegetable tanned, since the bridal leather does have a lot of waxes and oils. However, from extended use, it will begin to develop a bit of that gradient pattern as kind of dirt and grime gets in there and oils mix, and it can look very pleasing over time. In some ways, a used piece of bridal leather may even look better than a new piece of bridal leather. A few cons are that it can be more expensive. As we mentioned, there are a lot more steps in the production process and fewer tanneries that make it. So typically prices are going to be a little bit higher, which may or may not, be a con depending on what you're working with. It can also be trickier to find. Since, fewer tanneries do make this, you're going to have to look for it in certain places, and it may or may not be available or in the quantities that you want. Generally, I haven't really found it to be too hard to get or too hard to find, but just something to keep in mind that it's not going to be as readily available, as a common vegetable tanned cowhide. Keep in mind too that these can scratch easily. There are all those waxes and oils in there, which also makes the surface a little more kind of showy, if you will, if it gets scratched or abraded or something like that. Also, because of those oils and such, it's going to be a little bit easier to kind of get those scratches and abrasions out. So it's kind of like a 50-50, but keep in mind it may be a little more receptive to scratches initially than other types of leather. There are a lot of really good uses too. As we talked about, it's going to be great for horse tack, essentially where it was originated from. It's also going to be an excellent choice for things like wallets, straps, shoes, pet collars, leashes, any kind of cases or bags. You can even make purses with it. Pretty much anything that you'd use a quality vegetable tan leather for, using a bridal leather will typically work very well. It does have those oils and waxes, and so if that fits the end use case, this may even be a better option for those than a typical, veg tan leather. And some tips for working with bridal leather. First and foremost, If you're new to it, get some scraps or cut off some pieces from a larger one that you got and test it out with your tools. It's going to be a relatively dense material, and it's going to respond a tiny bit differently to putting in holes, also making cuts. So just get familiar so you know how your techniques will apply it a little bit differently to this. Along with that, since there are those oils and waxes that are infused, after you're working with it, make sure you clean off your tools, because that may transfer some of that to another material or your next project. It's not going to be excessive, but there may be some. And so if you're running a relatively clean shop, just an idea to keep in mind, clean off your tools, and that way you're all set to go for the next project. And there you have it, a look into bridal leather. Centuries in the making, a relatively desired material with some really good performance characteristics. It looks great, it feels really nice in the hand. It's going to be a little denser, a little heavier. So if you're looking to find a material for a project where you want longevity, character in the material, and a nice dense feel to it, this can be an excellent leather to try.